Our final part as he heads out tomorrow morning. Part two, as we're looking at the history of Israel becoming a nation again in May of 1948. We got a lot of video clips to play. We're going to pick it up where we left off last night. I'm not going to plow the ground we did yesterday. If you want to go see part one, you can go watch it at worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com. We'll pick it up at the Balfour Declaration and the San Remo Conference and more in just one momento. And then the bombing of the King David Hotel in July of 1946. Who did that bombing? How many people lost their lives? Why did they do it? Very controversial topic. We'll get into it tonight because we're not afraid of controversy. You know, history is what it is, the good, the bad, the ugly, but it is what it is. We have to teach it in context. So we'll talk about all those things tonight. All right. Before we do that, however, you guys know I love old newspapers. And I frame many of them. I frame them with beautiful blue mats and wood frames, glass, and they're hanging in control room number 2 on the wall. And I have a bunch that my mom gave me. The guys walking on the moon in 1969. I have thanks to my mother, I have the very last edition of the Washington Star. The very last edition ever published of the Washington Star, a very historic daily newspaper in Washington, D.C. I have a lot of historic newspapers on the day that President Kennedy was assassinated and so much more. And I've asked you guys I have another one I got a frame from one of you guys, sent me one on that announced the killing of a really famous, they call it, I guess, gangster. His name escapes me real quick. It's back in the black and white days.
Al Capone?
Close to Al Capone, but wasn't Al Capone. But it was another one like that. My memory slipped all of a sudden. I had his name on the tip of my tongue and then boom, gone. If I think of it, I'll tell you here in a minute. But I have a bunch of them I still need to frame. But I got one that's going to get framed immediately. It has to get framed immediately. Because of the fact that it is so old. It is the oldest newspaper that I now own, thanks to, I won't give her a last name, but her name is Kristen. Thanks to Kristen. Kristen emailed and said, would you like a newspaper from 1865? And I said, yeah, I would. And she was so kind. She packaged it up so nicely and neatly. No creases, big package because it had to be cushioned and everything. And she shipped it and I received it and I opened it last night. And it wasn't just a paper from 1865. It was printed 2 days after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Now, I didn't want to bring it in studio. It's too fragile. That's why it's going to get framed immediately to preserve it. So I didn't want to bring it in studio. I have to be very careful with it. But I did take a video of it. And I want you to see this because I think this is fascinating. I have a friend of mine who lives outside of Washington, D.C. He's, I think, 71 now. He majored in history, and he loves history. And I texted him this video about to show you last night. And he said, that is a treasure. That is a treasure. And indeed it is. It's fascinating. Watch this little clip I made. As you know, I love to collect newspapers. My mom has sent me a bunch, and I've asked my audience to send me some. Well, I just received one today, dated April 17th, 1865. This is 2 days after Lincoln was shot. And it talks all about Lincoln being shot, Secretary Seward. You know, there was multiple guys that went after that night. It talks about the assassins. It talks about measures to arrest the assassins. Last house of Mr. Lincoln, Sherman's army. The news of the fall of Richmond was received in Sherman's army. The next governor of Ohio, the health of the army resigned. All kinds of stuff, though, on the assassination up here, the assassins, etc. 2 days. It's the Cincinnati Daily commercial, 2 days after Lincoln was shot. And now I own it, thanks to this dear lady. I'm going to have to get that framed immediately, hung in my office. There you go. Kristen, thank you so much. Very kind of you, Kristen. It's going to go in my office right away, be framed. Beautiful matting and behind glass. And I'm going to get the glass so that if light gets in, it can't deteriorate it anymore. Because that is definitely one you want to preserve. What do you make of that, Aaron?
Oh,
That's something.
what a
The thing has been
treasure.
around since 1865.
That's a treasure. And the paper, it's tangible from something so far back. Beautiful, nostalgic.
It really is. So thank you. And any of the rest of you that have those old newspapers and your kids or grandkids don't want them, don't have any value, I guess, of history, some folks, send them my way. I am more than happy to preserve them and add them to our collection. A news organization with newspapers that are framed. Kind of interesting. We're very much on terrestrial radio and then the new digital platform. But here I am still very nostalgic for the daily newspapers, but only the ones that are historic. Because I could have, you could run. I mean, you can't take every newspaper, but if they're historic, John Dillinger, that's who the guy was. John Dillinger. I have one on the death of John Dillinger that has to be framed as well. But yeah, any of you that want to send those on, you can. The older, the better. Let's see if you can top that, guys. Kristen sets the record for my oldest newspaper, and I think the most interesting, 2 days after the assassination of President Lincoln. So thank you, Kristen. And again, if you want to send those on, pack them up and send them P.O. Box 1690, Collierville, Tennessee, 38027. All right. Okay. Now, remember, before we go to Aaron, who's sitting right here, as you heard, we're brought to you by you. How do we keep doing this stuff, folks? We're listener supported. One way is by your going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. And using the products that we use each and every day. Gatatana, one little scoop, the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. Nothing is added to this, folks. This is what God has made. And it has just been freeze dried into a powder so you can mix it into water. Now, we know we have a pet version. I give Dolly half a scoop on her food every morning. I drink a scoop of it every night with my dinner. That's how easy it is. Some people say it tastes kind of green. I'm like, well, that's interesting because I taste nothing after the first few times I took it. I got so used to it that I have no problem having it with my dinner as the liquid that I drink. So Melissa puts a scoop in a little glass of water, stirs it up, and I drink mine along with my meal. So there you go. Remember, the man that developed this was given a terminal diagnosis. I think I have that newspaper clipping somewhere. Here it is. He was given a terminal diagnosis. He was raising this phytoplankton for his crayfish and whatnot, and he starts eating it. And his daughter, who's pictured there, was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "What do I got to lose?" And the story has been told by him on YouTube, by his daughter. He went in for 11 biopsies. They all came back benign. And out of that was born Global Plankton Alliance. He went on to live another 10 years, retired to Hawaii. Now, I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you. I've done a lot of study on phytoplankton, and man alive, it is really hard for the bad things to live and these free radicals to live when you're drinking a phytoplankton. So I drink this every day, okay? And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. This has not been tested or approved by the FDA. It's not intended to treat, cure, prevent any disease. But I'll tell you something. If I were in a bad spot with my health, I'd be taking 3 or 4 scoops of this a day in the morning and at night. I believe in this big time. So there you go. We also here do this, Numi. Numi is loaded with glutathione to detox your cells. And Melissa and I have had the conversation again and again. Even when we try to eat healthy, we don't know what's in all these foods. You can't believe, apparently, what's on the label for some of them because they're telling you, oh, it's healthy, it's this instead of that. And you find out wrong-o when someone does a test. So as healthy as we try to be, it's difficult to get around these things. And even the colognes for guys, the perfume for ladies that we spray on, can have an impact by lowering, for guys, testosterone and other things. So it's crazy how careful we have to be. But also, it just reinforces the need to be detoxing your cells. And there are 165,000 studies on glutathione. And now the most effective way to get it into your bloodstream is by swishing it. You can go get an IV anywhere from $99 to $200 plus dollars, depending on where you're getting it. But it gets broken down in the IV according to the studies we've read. The most effective way to get this into your bloodstream within 90 seconds is by swishing it for about 3 minutes. And then you can spit it out or you can swallow it. It's up to you. But you're getting glutathione in your system. You have to have glutathione to live. But it starts decreasing at about the age of 20, okay? Studies have shown that glutathione can help decrease mercury and lead from your brain, thus helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. So we do this every day. We do our glutathione. This is it, the Numi product. We do our Gatatana, and then we do our Bella Grace, okay? This I've been taking since December of 2023. Now, you can look at the hair growth, okay? Even my daughter, who's come back to town, as you know, is like, the hair growth on your widow's peaks and everything, you didn't have that a few years ago. I said, no, I did not. It was going the opposite direction. And so many of you have started on this and experienced great results, like hair growth, hair thickness. But I'll tell you, I've shown it to you before. We're always adding new people. This was my hands before Bella Grace. This was very common, folks. Cracked and bleeding hands for years and years and years. And that's actually when they're pretty good. They got much worse than that. Now, I don't know if the camera can do a close up, but I have nothing going on here. There's no cuts. I got some ink on my hand from my pen, but my hands are not cracked and they're not bleeding. Okay? They're not cracked, they're not bleeding. I do have a callus right there, but my hands are not cracked and they're not bleeding. Okay? They have healed up ever since getting on Bella Grace. Now, why? Well, Dr. Lucky and others say you likely had a leaky gut. And I guess your gut lining is made of collagen. Then you say, I take collagen in my coffee. But many of you are drinking a very cheap collagen, and the studies show that about 95% of that ends up in the toilet. Whereas studies show 95% of this ends up in your system because it's also paired. Well, first of all, the peptides are cut short so your body can digest it. And they're high-end collagen, not cheap, not the inexpensive. The second thing, it's paired with astaxanthin, which crosses the brain-blood barrier. And then you have cat's claw, which decreases inflammation. And we know many of our problems are inflammation related, right? So there you go. You'll find Bella Grace, which we take every day. Already taken mine today. You'll find it at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I would urge you to get your own healthcare kit. We have several on hand. So we have our own antibiotics on hand. Many times something comes up where I had pneumonia a couple of years ago, or Melissa gets a massive sinus infection that has to be treated with an antibiotic. She doesn't want to take antibiotics unless she has to. But when you have to, you have to. You don't want to fool around with things like sinus infection or anything close to the brain. So we don't have to run to some healthcare place or urgent care and sit and wait because we have our own pharmacy, our own urgent care, really, with our own medical kits. The blue one is the one that we're talking about that we are so big on, that we carry with us. Even when we go out of town for something, I always say, do we have our satellite phone? Do we have our wellness kit? Because you don't want to get sick on the road. You don't want to get sick anytime, but you don't want to be sick on the road and be without what you need. So there you go. You can find all about it and a lot more as well at worldviewhealthcare.com, worldviewhealthcare.com, or go to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Okay. The water filters, we sell a ton of those because, again, who wants to drink all kinds of nasty things in your water like chlorine, copper, fluoride, arsenic, pesticides, bacteria. And now we read the other day that the morning after pill Apparently the abortion morning after pill is being found in the water. That can't be good for you. Do you guys have those problems in Israel, Aaron?
I haven't heard of that one. Wow.
The abortion pill, the morning after pill, is ending up in the water. So I guess people take it and they use the potty and it gets, cleaned up and pumped back into the water system, supposedly clean. But we're reading reports that not all of these chemicals get taken out. So again, you want to have a good water filter. We have one under our kitchen sink and one on our shower. I take 5 or 6 of these a day. That's melissaprotein.com. That burns fat. It also is 100% plant-based. Maintain your muscle mass. I'm walking about 4 miles a day. I do about 2 miles in the morning, 2 miles when I get off the air. That's been my process here the last few weeks. And that's helping me obviously lose weight, cutting out all the sugars, getting off all the carbohydrates. But I don't want to lose my muscle mass. I don't want to look like I'm scrawny. So you need protein, everything your muscles need. And you can find it at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Okay. I guess that's about it right there. There's the Bella Grace. There's more. You'll find them there, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All right. Joining me now is Aaron Lavarco. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Brennan. Great to be back.
Great to have you back with us. Appreciate that. All right, let's pick up where we left off yesterday. We started talking about the Balfour Declaration, and we showed the letter from 1917 written by Mr. Balfour, who was with the government. He was,
correct.
What was he with? The foreign ministry, I think?
Yes.
Of the Great
yes,
Britain?
Lord Balfour, correct. Yes.
And he writes to Mr. Rothschild, who'd been buying up land in Israel, spending his own money, which a lot of people don't talk about, to buy the land and help the Jews get established with their vineyards and way of life. So we went there to the 1917 letter and the Balfour Declaration. Tell us about the Balfour Declaration, will you?
Well, the Balfour Declaration was declared by Lord Balfour on behalf of Her Majesty's government, His Majesty's government, I apologize. And it was basically looking at the situation where Jewish people were looking for a homeland. We talked about that yesterday with Herzl, Theodor Herzl, and modern Zionism. There was a movement that had started in 1897 where a group of Jewish people were concerned about the plight of Jewry in Europe. And so they met in Basel, Switzerland to discuss what can we do. And like I said earlier, some people suggested Africa, Uganda, Kenya, because that was part of the British Commonwealth. So it was convenient, but that got thrown off the table very quickly. So based on the Zionistic movement, the British took over what was then called Palestine. It became part of the British Mandate. The British Mandate ruled from 1917 to 1947, exactly 30 years. And one of the first things they did is they encouraged and they supported a national homeland for the Jewish people. Now, very important to note, they didn't say a state. They said a homeland. That was part of the clause, that was part of the declaration, not the actual Balfour Declaration, although it does mention we are in favor, His Majesty's government is in favor of a national homeland for the Jewish people, a safe haven for them. And so he implemented it. Now, some people say that he was doing people favors, maybe. And one of the theories we talked about was perhaps the fact that one of his friends was a Jewish scientist called Chaim Weizmann. And Chaim Weizmann was a good friend of Balfour. And Chaim Weizmann invented the formula to make acetone. And acetone is a chemical used in making bombs. And the British needed bombs in the First World War. And so some people say that, well, Balfour was doing Chaim Weizmann and his people a favor for giving him the formula to make that chemical. But that's not accurate. It's a nice story, but it's not accurate. He did give him the formula, to which the British paid a lot of money. So that is accurate, but that came a little bit later. The friendship with Chaim Weizmann had been around for a long time. So the Balfour Declaration was declared. Can you imagine, Brandon, being a Jew in Europe, having the new superpower in the world, Britain, who just took over your ancient homeland that you'd been out of for nearly 2,000 years, and then one of the representatives of the government say, hey, you Jews, we are in favor of you coming back home. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's exactly the narrative. So that created a mass amount of hope, excitement all out through Europe, but it also created a lot of, what's the word I can use, angst among the locals. And the locals at the time were a mixture of Arabs, Ottoman Turks. There were Jews there. There was always historically a small remnant of Jews. But yes, the angst of the Arabs living in the land, they didn't like this. But what a stir, what a shaking up was going on when that declaration, the Balfour Declaration, was proclaimed. And in 2017, that was like 9 years ago, we commemorated the 100th year anniversary of that declaration. That's how important it was. But let me make it clear, like I did yesterday. The people that were part and parcel of paving the way for that Balfour Declaration, the Australians, the New Zealanders, called the ANZACs. It's an acronym, Australian New Zealand Armed Corps. They were the ones who fought and drove out the Ottoman Turks. There were other people involved, the British, there was Scotland, there were the Irish, many people from Commonwealth, British Commonwealth nations who were serving the British. The general at the time, the British general, was a very famous man called Allenby. That was his name, General Allenby. And an interesting story, Brennan, when he stood inside of the Jaffa Gate of Jerusalem, in the very place that he stood, I actually worked in the shop 10 meters from where he stood. I worked there for 12 years. He stood up, but when he came in the Jaffa Gate, all the Arabs, not the Ottoman Turks, but the Arabs, they shouted, they were cheering him coming through the gate.
And what year was this?
This was 1917, when the British took over. Now, his name was Allenby. And so they were all cheering Allenby, but they changed it. They said, instead of Allenby, they started to say Allah Nabi. Allah Nabi. Allah is the name for God. Nabi is the Arabic word for prophet. So they were actually cheering Allah's prophet. Allah's prophet. Now, it needs to be noticed, because this was a very historic moment. General Allenby came in on his horse. All these people were cheering him. Do you know what he did?
What?
He got off he was on his horse. He got off his horse, got off his high horse. And the reason why, he said, when our Lord Jesus came into Jerusalem, he said he was on a donkey. He said, I will never compete with our Lord. And he didn't want to take any glory. So he stepped down from his horse and he walked in the Jaffa Gate. And that's a historical moment.
You want to see this? Watch this, Aaron.
Commander-in-Chief.
Look at that.
That's the Jaffa Gate, exactly what I was talking about. And you've got footage from 109 years ago. Incredible. That's the Citadel of David. That's inside of the Jaffa Gate. I believe that was him. Crowds of troops line the route. There's actually pictures I've seen.
There
Yeah.
he is. Is that him?
No, I believe that's him. Not 100% sure. Maybe they're waiting. Here he comes on the horse. Think.
Conversing with commanders of allied
Attachments.
and attaches. There, now he's off his horse. You never seen this footage?
I think I have, but it's been many, many years. And there are his British officers and soldiers. And this was just across the road from the British headquarters, which was the King David Hotel.
We'll get to that in a minute, won't we?
Yes, just across the road. There's the Jaffa Gate there. And maybe they'll show him coming in on his horse and then stepping down. Or maybe that is him there.
That's him there coming in, it looks like, isn't it?
I believe, yes. With the entourage of officers.
Is this part of your education in Israel? The kids learn all this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are pivotal moments in our history. Pivotal. Defining.
Let me read that. Reading Sir Edmund Allenby's proclamation, which is translated in different languages by interpreters, lest any of you should be alarmed by reason of your experience at the hands of the enemy who has retired, I hereby inform you that it is my desire that every person should pursue his lawful business without fear of interruption.
Very British.
Let's see if there's any more to that. There we go. More
there we
footage.
go. Yes. Now to the right of that screen, yeah, that's where, there he is. That's where he stood and was greeted.
And then he took command.
And he took command.
Receiving representatives of the various religious sects and civic dignitaries, every sacred building, monument, holy, I don't know what the words are off the screen, holy site, shrine, traditional site, endowment, something about being bequest or customary place of something will be maintained and protected according to the existing customs and beliefs of those whose faiths they are sacred.
So it obviously states that they're not going to
go in there and tear everything down.
No, exactly. They're going to respect everyone's religion and faith and belief. And so they've just come from the battlefield of a number of years of fighting the Ottoman Turks, driving out the Ottoman Turks, the British, as I said, the British, the Australians, the New Zealanders, the Anzacs. And then, of course, he gets a lot of the praise, even though the British didn't do most of the fighting. It was mostly the Anzacs.
Here we saw that it said that was detachments of the army passing through the outlying districts of Jerusalem.
Yeah, exactly. And
now, again, they may have done this because they wanted pipelines and other things, but for whatever reason it was done, to the victor goes the spoils.
Absolutely.
They beat the Ottoman.
Yep. And it was
Turks, and they took over.
And it was for sure geopolitical. It served the British. It served their Commonwealth. And
so what has to happen now is, so basically the British are controlling Jerusalem.
Absolutely controlling.
And now what has to happen is a transition from the British to the Jewish state.
Yes. Now, it's important to note that one of the statements of the British is that they would come in, but that their goal was not to stay there, Brandon. Their goal was not to stay there. The goal would be to help facilitate a takeover by locals. Then it became more centralized or focused with the Balfour Declaration that it would be
which was
Jewish.
the same year.
It was the same year, exactly.
At least that letter was written in 1917, and this was 1917.
It was. But the British made clear that they also wanted to take care of the Arabs. Okay? And part of the mandate, British mandate, and the League of Nations, a few years later, is that the land was going to be divided into two states. This is where we get the two-state solution that was offered. It was offered. The Jewish people accepted it, but the Arabs rejected it.
What year was that?
This was 1922.
And where was their land that they were being offered?
So basically, the land that was offered was going to be, well, how it ended out, the Jewish people was going to get about, in the end, about 22% of the land. Sorry, they were going to be offered pretty much 50-50, pretty much. But as it turned out, the Jewish people only got about 23% of the land. And that was West Jerusalem, the Galilee, and the coastal plain, a very small part. Oh, and the Negev, the desert. Most of their land actually was in the desert. Out of most of the land that the Jewish people were given, I think it was about 70% was in the desert. The coastal plain, the upper Galilee, and half of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was cut in two. West Jerusalem would go to the Jewish people, and east would be in actually Jordan. That was the nation.
And that's what
Jordan.
you acquired in 1967.
That's what we took over 19 years later in the 1967 Six-Day War.
Because Jordan attacked you guys.
Because-
while you were fighting Egypt.
Absolutely.
And
Syria.
your people said to Jordan, we're busy fighting a war. We don't have time to mess with you. Do not come fight us.
That's right.
They didn't listen.
They didn't.
And you guys whooped them and took East Jerusalem.
Absolutely.
To the victor goes the spoils.
Yep. And there's something that needs to be proclaimed in this period before the 67 war. And this is a very controversial issue. And maybe I'm getting ahead a bit of myself because I'm actually...
You can mention it. We'll come back.
Well, what happened is I'm jumping ahead to 1948 when the state was declared.
We'll mention it and then we'll come back to it.
Yeah, basically when the state was declared, the surrounding 8 Muslim nations that were surrounding us, they declared war on us.
Let's come back to that then.
We'll come back to that, yeah.
All right. So then from the Balfour Declaration, and again, folks, if you are a member of the Vault, you can ask questions like, tell me about the Balfour Declaration, and it'll give you all the information that we've been discussing here, and then it will provide videos you can go to watch, like interviews with me and Tommy Ice and others on this. And then I said, tell me about the San Remo Conference. Well, that is critically important, but often overlooked milestone in the legal and historical establishment of the important, we got a little typo there, the important thing here. I don't know why there's a typo, but we'll alert our IT guy. According to a Worldview Tube video titled What Zionism Is and What It Is Not by author Olivier Melnick. He's a good friend of mine. I should be able to say his name. Olivier Melnick. The San Remo Conference was a post-World War I international conference held in San Remo, Italy in 1920. So we're going to go from the Balfour Declaration, which says, as we learned up here, says that Israel has a right to the land, and approximately 75% of the British War Council, the special council set up by David Lloyd George during World War I, were evangelical Christians with deep biblical roots coming from Scottish Presbyterian and other church backgrounds. Their biblical convictions strongly influenced the Declaration's creation.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating, right?
Absolutely.
Its aftermath, as discussed in a Worldview Tube video on Worldview Radio, following the Declaration, multiple attempts were made to partition the land. 1936-37, the Peel Commission offered Arabs 67% of the land. They rejected it. 1948, 50-50 partition plan was proposed. They rejected that too. Okay, so that's coming from our Worldviewpedia, folks. If you're a member of the Vault, you can use this. I think if you're not, you get to try it, I don't know, once or twice a month for free. The San Remo Conference then comes around in 1920 in San Remo, Italy. And who you got involved? Great Britain, France, Italy, Japan, and the United States. And it was essentially a continuation and expansion of the Balfour Declaration of 1917. Okay? One of the most remarkable statements about the San Remo came from Chaim Weizmann.
Chaim. Chaim.
That's how you say that?
That's how you say it, Chaim.
You see, phonics doesn't always work for your names over there, does it?
Right, no.
Chaim Weizmann, who was present at the conference, he declared, quote, "You can say that the state of Israel was born the 25th of April, 1920 in San Remo," end quote. This means Israel's legal foundation was established 28 years before the formal declaration of statehood in 1948. The decision made at the San Remo were subsequently adopted, decisions there, by the League of Nations, which was essentially the predecessor to the United Nations, consisting of 63 countries at the time. 51 of those nations signed the declaration. Those nations formally gave the right to Palestine, geographically that's Israel, to the Jewish people. The rest of the Middle East was given to the Arab people. The rest of the Middle East. Okay, you can have all of the Middle East. That's yours. Go ahead. Have fun. But we're going to give a portion of this area, Israel, to the Jews. And
Is that
51 nations.
Is that too much to ask?
Right. You guys can have all of the Middle East. We just want this little sliver.
Yeah.
But 51 nations signed on to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't hear this from the anti-Zionists, do
No,
we? From the
we don't.
anti-Semites.
No.
They're occupiers.
Yeah,
they stole
that's
the
all
land.
you hear.
Well, they bought the land. What do you mean they stole the land? Rothschild bought the land. He bought a bunch of the land. He donates it eventually to the government. And then 51 nations say in 1922 at the San Remo conference, 1920, and in Italy, no, it's going to be the Jews. They get the land.
And Brandon, a lot of people until today are angry with the British.
Mm-hmm.
You colonialists. How dare you? What right did you have to do that?
Well, I would say because the Jews have been there for 3,500 years and archaeological evidence confirms it.
Right. But it was, like you just read, it wasn't just the British. It was the League of Nations behind it.
Which eventually became the UN.
Correct. And it needs to be for the sake of the bigger picture. The San Remo resolution wasn't just about Palestine. It was actually to break up the whole of the Ottoman Empire. What do we do with all of this land? Because it wasn't just Palestine, it was Syria, it was Lebanon, it was other surrounding areas. So they ended up breaking it into three major parts. They gave the British Palestine, they gave Syria to the French, and then they gave Mesopotamia to it was the Allied powers. So it was the San Remo resolution was not just Palestine, it was also all of the land that the British took over from the Ottoman Turks. It was a huge piece of land, and that was it. But Palestine was a big part of it, and the British got the control of it, and they decided on the next conference, which is the Sykes-Picot Agreement. And basically what that was, where they proposed an independent Arab state or confederation of states. And this is really what I was talking about before, the two-state solution. This is where they wanted to give, it's not that they neglected the Arabs at all. They wanted to allow the Arabs their autonomy and their freedom as well. And that was a big part of it. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, named after the British and French representatives who met to discuss that with the British Prime Minister, Lloyd George.
Okay, so we have is it called the Peel Agreement? P-E-E-L?
That came a little later.
Okay, what year did that come?
That came in, I believe it was the 1930s, 1936.
Okay.
Now that was in response to the Hebron massacre, which would happen in 1929. We touched on this yesterday. In 1929, in one of the four holy cities that we talked about yesterday, let me recap. The four ancient holy cities to the Jewish people: Jerusalem, Sfat or Safed, Tiberias, and Hebron. And the reason why Hebron was one of the ancient holy cities for the Jewish people was because that's where all of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, except for Rachel, were buried. And we have their tombs until this day at the caves of Machpelah in Hebron. So, but in 1929, and let me give the background. Jews and Arabs worked together. They were neighbors together. They ate together. Everything was relatively peaceful. But there was a pogrom against the Jews in Hebron. In the day, it really was as big as October the 7th. It really was a massive onslaught. And the numbers that I've got here are about 700 Jews were slaughtered. That's not as many as October the 7th, which was about 1,300, but 700, Brandon. A good amount of them were yeshiva students. It was 2 days of massacre, 2 days of
And
killing.
who was carrying out the massacre?
Well, it was the Arabs, but word very clearly, history claims that the orders were given from a man in Jerusalem. And that man in Jerusalem was called the Mufti.
The Grand Mufti.
The Grand Mufti.
Al-Husseini.
Al-Husseini.
Who went on to work with Adolf Hitler.
Correct.
In a lot of my documentaries, we have a lot of black and white
Who
footage.
read Mein Kampf and was motivated by Mein Kampf.
And they translated Mein Kampf by Hitler into Arabic and called it my jihad, from my struggle to my jihad. He was given a place to live in Berlin. He was given access to the radio to pump out this ideology in Arabic, to ask the Muslim world to come join him in helping Hitler. And the idea would be that when Hitler was done with the Jews in Europe, they would go together over to, quote, Palestine and take care of the, quote, Jewish problem there. And
Exactly.
That's the Grand Mufti of Palestine, Al-Husseini. I have some, this is from my series, and this is also in my new book coming out this fall on Hamas, okay? This is all tied back to Muslim Brotherhood. He was the Grand Mufti.
Yes.
He's a Muslim Brotherhood guy, which is tied right back to Hamas.
Yep.
Hamas was started in, I think, 1987, okay? Muslim Brotherhood was started in 1928, okay? So you guys see what we're talking about here, right? Now, I got pictures of the Grand Mufti, and he, by the way, in Nuremberg, the Nuremberg trials, he was the one that was credited as being one of the architects of the Holocaust. And in fact, there were about, I don't know, a pretty good sized group of kids that were going to be allowed to leave Germany. But Germany, but the Grand Mufti, and I think Poland, and there was the Grand Mufti that said no.
Right. Exactly.
And we have all of this documented in my book coming out, in my 11 hours on Hamas, but I also have it in my book that's coming out on Hamas this fall. In fact, I just found the pictures while we're talking. So here we go.
Brandon, before you run that, can I just, I need to correct myself. I quoted 700 were murdered. That's wrong. There were 700 in the community.
Okay.
67 were murdered.
Okay.
So I was quite off, and I just wanted to correct that statistic.
67, though, still murdered. All right, there's the Muslim Brotherhood, the Grand Mufti al-Husseini, with Hitler, November 28, 1941. And this is the guy that ordered the murder of those 67 Jews in Hebron.
It's highly believed, based on what was going on at the time and based on his sentiments towards the Jews.
Well, there he is giving the Hitler, Reich salute. He recruited thousands of Bosnian Muslims to wear the Nazi uniform. The Bosnian Waffen-SS volunteers. There he is, members of the Waffen-SS during an official visit to Bosnia in 1943, coming from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Here are the Bosnian Muslims wearing the Nazi uniform. You can see they're reading about Islam and Juntum. There's the Bosnian Muslims displayed their symbol on their uniforms. They had on their uniforms. You can see them on their collars there, right? And this is just us blowing it up, which on their uniforms, they were wearing the swastika and the sword of Islam. Now, this is all, look, there he is. There's the Grand Mufti. Let me fix that slide. The picture's gotten a little too big there. here's the Grand Mufti, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their work with Adolf Hitler. But there he is working with the Nazis, and he's touring Auschwitz in 1943, working with Heinrich Himmler. And in the Nuremberg trials, it came out that the Grand Mufti was very much involved in the final solution. So this is Muslim Brotherhood, which was formed in 1928, that ended up creating Hamas in 1987. Which created then CARE, I think, in 1993. I'm going to double check my figures, my dates here for you, but I'm pretty sure I have those off the top of my head correctly. But I'm going to, let me look. Let's see here. Yep. I have a slide on it. Muslim Brotherhood, found in 1928. Muslim Brotherhood founded in 1928. They founded Hamas in 1987, as I said. Okay, CARE was 1994, not 1993, but 1994. Right. But there you go.
But you see the chain reaction, the where the roots go to, and going back to the Hebron massacre, it was a massive traumatic moment for the Jewish community.
Yeah,
and remember. The British were in control here, Brandon. The British were in control. So what did the Jewish people do? The Jewish people started to defend themselves from this moment on.
Which is a biblical right to do.
It's a biblical right to do. But the problem was the British said, no, we will defend you. We are the ones in power. We have our British troops here. We will defend you. But what was happening is, as the British were trying to defend us, the Arabs would kill the British. So the British were in the middle of this fight, and they stopped defending the Jews because they didn't want to lose their own soldiers. So there was at this moment of history that a number of underground Jewish gangs started to form. Mm-hmm. Some of the names are very famous. The Irgun, led by Menachem Begin, who would later on become a prime minister of Israel.
He was one of the leaders of the gang.
He was the leader of the Irgun. Then you've got what were called,
and again they were organized,
yes,
as basically as what we in America would call militia,
yes,
to defend life.
Exactly, but they had to go underground. Then you've got you've got the Haganah group that came a little bit later. You've got another group called the Lehi, and another leader was a man called Yitzhak Shamir. Yitzhak Shamir would also become the prime minister of Israel. So you've got these leaders, they were underground. One of the problems is getting ammunition. Where were they going to get ammunition? There's a place on the Mediterranean coast called Atlit, and it's a touristy attraction. It's a factory that was actually a British barracks, and Jews that were working there and volunteering there, what they did is they built an underground factory where they were making bullets. But how were they going to do it? Because to make the bullets, it made a lot of noise. So what they will do at this museum, Brandon, they show you how they went underground, and they offered to do the British laundry, and the noise from the machines and the laundry covered out the making bullets under the ground. They made over I can't remember, 1.5 million bullets at this factory, and that was how they were able to defend themselves. But these Jewish underground gangs, they were the ones who were defending the Jews because the British, it became too dangerous. And it was at this stage too, Brandon, that the British started to pull back and renege against the Balfour Declaration. And it needs to be said that while Balfour, on behalf of the government, was for the Jewish people and the nation, as time went on and the British were being killed, the British were in the middle of a battle, they started to renege. And guess what happened then? Now I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but now we're in the 1930s.
All right, so hold right there.
Yes.
Because I want to go too fast. Because while you're talking, I've also got video footage. Are you ready? Watch this, guys.
Right.
Look at this. What's going on there, Aaron?
That's the factory. There you go. That's exactly it. That's the underground factory where tourists are being shown around. This is where, under the ground, here they're going down now, above was where the British lived and where they did the laundry and everything. But under the ground is where a group of Jewish people were secretly making bullets. Doesn't sound like much, making bullets. What kind of a life is that? It was to save lives. And I can't remember the number, but it was, I think it was 1 million, 1.5 million bullets. But it was under there.
And this was in what year again?
This was in the I believe it was the 1920s, 1930s, that period. And so you go downstairs.
Have you been there?
I've been here a number of times, and here's some of the machines that they use. But to make the bullets from the material, it made a lot of noise. So they used the washing machines
As cover.
Has
anyone made a movie of this?
Not that I know, but it's a great museum. It's these are the original machines that were used, where you put the metal through a process.
And they made 1.5 million bullets.
I don't want to quote the number. I can't remember, but there were
I'll look it
many.
up while you talk.
Yeah. So these are the machines.
Isn't that something?
All under the noses of the British while they were doing their laundry as a favor for the British. And of course, the British were very happy.
Have their laundry done.
They got their laundry done.
Isn't that something? You take tours there?
Yes, I do. Not that many go, but every so often a group will. A lot of groups, they like to focus on the biblical sites, but there are groups every so often that will focus on Zionism. And this is, of course, a major important site. There's the bullets.
Isn't that something? All right, we'll stop that right there. But this is somebody on YouTube that's made this. I guess it's called we can show it, the Haganah Underground Ammunition Factory during the British Mandate Palestine 1940s.
It was the 1940s. Okay. Yeah. The Haganah was one of about 4.
Well, that's what they say. So hopefully their facts are right.
Right. The Haganah was one of about 4 major underground gangs. Haganah means defense. And so, yes, they
say it was built during the 1946 to 48.
Okay.
Established by the Haganah, the largest Jewish underground movement during the British Mandate. The factory would develop into what is today called IMI, Israel Military Industries, or TAZ. The special clandestine factory was prepared secretly in less than a month, 8 meters or 25 feet underground. Its openings were covered by a 10-ton oven and a large washing machine that camouflaged the noise of the manufactured bullets. Look at that. They produced over, what is that, 2,500,000?
There you go, 2.5 million.
2.5 million 9-millimeter bullets, mostly from Sten guns during its 2-year occupation.
So I can't remember how they got the material.
So if people want to go watch that, there's the title. So if they want to go watch it on their own, there it is. Pretty fascinating. All right,
Yes.
keep going.
Yeah, well, they would have had to have got the material and then somehow got the material to those people that were working under the ground there to make the bullets.
Now, I do have something on the Hebron massacre, which that happened again in what year?
1929.
Okay, 1929, which is why they ended up making all these bullets underground. All right, watch this.
Exactly.
We got some audio, I think, with this. Here we go. On August 24, 2029, the Arab population of Hebron began a brutal program against the Jews. Israel was then part of the British Mandate Palestine. Hebron had a small Jewish population which lived in peace with their Arab neighbors. I'll just turn off the music. But Jewish-Arab tensions were growing in Mandate Palestine as Jewish immigration increased. Violence began in Jerusalem in the evening before the Hebron massacre on a Friday.
So it began in Jerusalem.
Three Jews and 3 Arabs were reportedly killed in clashes. False rumors were spread that Jews planned to attack the Temple Mount. Is all this true?
No,
The violence,
yes,
the violence
yes.
spilled over to Hebron, first targeting yeshiva students. The next morning, a mob. Wait a minute. The next morning, a Shabbat,
which was a Sabbath, a Shabbat.
a mob in Hebron killed Jewish families in their homes. Okay. They ransacked the Hebron synagogue and yeshiva.
A yeshiva is a study center for Jewish people.
The massacre lasted several days. 67 Jews were killed.
Including babies.
Some Arab families helped shelter Jews
That
from the mob.
needs to be mentioned, Brennan. It's true. There were a number of Arab families who came, risked their lives, and provided shelter for some of the Jews.
The Hebron massacre further shook Jewish-Arab relations.
It was already fragile, Brennan, but this Grand Mufti of Jerusalem stirred the flames. And isn't it interesting, the accusations that the Jews were planning to build a synagogue on the Temple Mount, overthrow the Temple Mount? Isn't that what we get today, that people are accusing the Jews of upsetting the status quo?
Yes.
The fact is, there's no justification, even if there are plans, even if you do hear these rumors, there's no justification for murdering, especially children and babies.
Right, exactly. Let's see. And by the way, a while ago, Peel also recommended moving 225,000 people. That was back a little bit back behind this, what we're discussing now. I'm going back a little bit. Peel, P-E-E-L. Peel
Yes.
recommended moving 225,000 people. That was a British Commission's idea, not a Zionist one. So
Yes.
I just want to make clear, because people talk about the Jews, this, the Jews, that. Some of these things about moving people, doing this, doing that, was not being made by the Jews, being made by the British.
The British, of course. Well, I thought the Peel Commission was 1935.
Okay.
And that came, my understanding is the Peel Commission was in 1935, and that was to discuss.
Okay, well, you're right. It is 1935.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that came after the Hebron massacre.
Okay.
And it was really to discuss what to do in the aftermath, because the tensions now were really boiling. And 1935, we're talking about, when officially, what was the year that the Second World War began? That we're talking about this time period. A lot was going on. Jews were wanting to escape Europe. The handwriting was on the wall, and many Jews had already escaped and come back to Palestine. The British gave the Jews permission to come back. But, like I said yesterday, now you've got the demographics changing. You've got the Arab population up here, and the Jewish population is rising. And so, in an unparalleled move, Brennan, this is a stain for us and a stain on British history. The British limited Jewish immigration to Palestine to 35,000 a year. Now, that may sound a lot, but when you're talking about millions being persecuted,
Trying to get out.
35,000 a year, break that down into 12, that's 3,000 a month. And what happened is that many Jews who before were promised to come back, they got on ships and boats, they escaped, and they finally reached the shores of Palestine. And guess what? They were told
get in.
to turn away. And of course, there's a famous Hollywood movie about this called Exodus with Paul Newman.
Of course, World War II started in 1939
Okay, that came a little bit later.
and then went through 1945.
Yep. Now, that story of the Exodus boat was
Of course, I think America didn't get involved till December 41 after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, right?
something
December
like that.
1941.
But the problem, even before the Nazis came to power, there was already pogroms
Right.
and Jewish persecution. So they started to come. But even without that, the Jewish people were promised a homeland, the Balfour Declaration. They started to come back, but because of the Arabs living in Palestine rioting, the British, who were in the middle, they limited Jewish immigration. And so the story of Exodus, the boat called Exodus, 5,000 Jews arrived at the shores, 5,000 on this one boat. The boat was turned away and 4,000 of them perished.
You're talking about the St. Louis?
No, I'm talking about the boat called the Exodus.
The Exodus. Okay, that's why it was called that. That's right. And then that's what the movie's about. Well, we have one that we talk about is the MS St. Louis. And this was a boat that was used to try to get Jews out of the area under the command of Captain Gustavus Schroeder. St. Louis set sail from Hamburg to Havana, Cuba, on May 13th, 1939, carrying 937 passengers, most of them Jewish refugees, seeking asylum from Nazi persecution in Germany. Captain Schroeder was a German who went to great lengths to ensure dignified treatment for his passengers. Food served included items subject to rationing in Germany, and childcare was available while parents dined. And he talked about how well he cared for them, by the way. I remember reading about this. But anyway, the ship kept trying to find places to go and let the Jews off. And no one would take them. Even the United States refused to take them. And it came out that of the 620, this is according to, what group is this? This is according to Refugee Denied, the St. Louis passengers and the Holocaust. Of the 620 St. Louis passengers who returned to continental Europe because it kept being rejected, we determined that 87 were able to immigrate before Germany invaded Western Europe on May 10th, 1940. 254 passengers in Belgium, France, and the Netherlands after that date died during the Holocaust. 254. Most of these people were murdered in the killing centers of Auschwitz and Sobibor. The rest died in internment camps and hiding or attempting to evade the Nazis. 365 of the 620 passengers who returned to continental Europe survived the war. Of the 288 passengers sent to Britain, the vast majority were alive at the war's end. And of course, they tried getting into the United States.
Yeah. Now, Brannon, this period, now we talked about the Peel Commission, who after the Hebron massacre in 1929, the Peel Commission in 1935 got together, they discussed what are we doing with the rising tensions, and the Jews paid for it by the British limiting immigration to 35,000 a year.
Now, by the way, I just want to make clear, I looked it up. The Peel Commission, formerly known as the Palestine Royal Commission, was a British Royal Commission of Inquiry headed by Lord Peel, P-E-E-L, two E's, appointed in 1936 to investigate the cause of conflict in the Mandatory Palestine, which was administered by the United Kingdom following a 6-month-long Arab general strike.
Yes.
On July 7th, 1937, the commission published a report that for the first time stated that the League of Nations mandate had become unworkable and recommended partition. The British cabinet endorsed the partition plan in principle, requested more information. Following the publication in 1938, the Woodhead Commission was appointed to examine it in detail and recommended an actual partition plan.
Brannon, can I stop you there and say that one of those first sentences you read, which determined that the British mandate was not workable. Why wasn't it workable? Because locals were persecuting and killing Jews. That's why. Locals did not accept it. And the British were not strong enough to crush the opposition. And it was led by the Mufti. Once again, the Mufti of Jerusalem, he led these attacks. So you've got the Peel Commission, and then the next thing that came from that, in your notes at number 6, was what was called the Evian Conference in July 1938, in a place in France called Evian. That's the name of where the famous Evian water comes from. Evian. They met, delegates met to discuss, in sympathy for the Jewish people who were seeking to flee from Nazi persecution. And this is where all these nations, Brannon, were discussing what to do with these Jews who were being persecuted. Now, sadly, and by the way, up until now, we're talking 1938, already 150,000 Jews had fled Germany. However, there was still 185,000 Jews that were brought under Nazi rule. So the question around the world was, who is going to take the Jews?
Let me go back real quick to the issue of the Peel Commission, because this led to a lot of different investigations.
Yes.
And
You mean the Hebron massacre or the general picture, what was going on? Both.
yeah, and the Arab clash, the clash between the Arabs and the Jews.
Yes.
And there was a lot of complaints that the Jews are being given the nice land. And the commission found that, quote, though the Arabs have benefited by the development of the country owing to Jewish immigration, this has had no conciliatory effect.
Right.
On the contrary, improvement in the economic situation in Palestine has meant the deterioration of the political situation, end quote.
Interesting.
Addressing the, quote, Arab charge that the Jews have obtained too large a portion of good land cannot be maintained, end quote, the commission noted that, quote, much of the land now carrying orange groves was sand dunes or swamp and uncultivated when it was purchased,
That's right.
end quote.
That's right. But Brandon, there's hundreds of stories about exactly this issue. One of the interesting stories is if you go back to even to the 1800s, there was a group of Germans living in Germany who wanted to come to the Holy Land. And this is part of the story here. A group of Germans, they wanted to come and live in the Holy Land and live like first century Christians. So they left everything. They came and they started to cultivate the land. They were great farmers. And they taught the local Jews how to also to be good farmers. And by the time we're talking about this story, the 1930s, the Jewish people had become very successful farmers. The Arabs got left behind. Some of them got left behind and they were jealous. They did not like what was going on. And what they did is they twisted the narrative and they said that the Jews have got better land, which is what you quoted. No, they didn't have better land. They just worked hard on the land and it had become more fruitful.
In fact, the commission says, and they wrote this, quote, that the shortage of land is, we consider, due less to the amount of land acquired by Jews than to the increase in the Arab population, end quote. Endeavors to control the alienation of land by Arabs to Jews have not been successful. In the hills, there is no more room for further close settlement by Jews. In the plains, it should only be allowed under certain restrictions, end quote.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, I don't know what ethnic people, but let's just say Indians or Chinese immigrate to your country. Usually they're very, very good hard workers, right? And they succeed. And then the locals, after 10, 20 years, they look at these Indians or Chinese and they get jealous and they start to complain. It's simply because the locals haven't worked hard enough and these new immigrants have worked harder.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Don't you see that today where Israel is flourishing and Gaza, they're living third world poverty because they're spending their money on terrorism and tunnels underground.
Exactly. Exactly.
They're just a backwards people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they've got potential. And hopefully, you know, some of these nations that have joined the Abraham Peace Accords, in fact, there are the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, what they've done in their country is incredible, but they have a different mindset. They're a completely different breed of Muslim.
The commission went on to state the Jewish national home is no longer an experiment. The growth of its population has been accompanied by political, social, and economic developments along the lines laid down at the outset. The chief novelty is the urban and industrial development. The contrast between the modern democratic and primarily European character of the national home and that of the Arab world around it is striking. The temper of the home is strongly nationalist. There can be no question of fusion or assimilation between Jewish and Arab cultures. The national home cannot be half national. End quote.
You know, as you were reading that, you know, all I could think of was Rothschild. Rothschild's money, he invested a few decades before, Brennan. He invested in land. He invested his workers, the colonialists. They worked with locals, and the locals, they worked themselves up. They tapped into the water. They planted vineyards. They worked hard, and it paid off. It paid off. Rothschild's investments paid off, but the Arab mindset, you know, and I don't know if that mindset is connected to their religion, Brennan. You know, you talked about a backward people. You know, they're happy living a very non-materialistic life. They're happy living very, very modest. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get educated. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work hard. And look, you know, a lot of Arabs are very, very hard workers in Israel today. We have over 2 million Arabs. They're very hard workers, but there is a mindset. And I can't help but going back to the prophecy when Ishmael was born, you know, it says he will be a wild donkey of a man and he will fight with his brothers. And then when Jacob and Esau, you know, when they were in the womb of Rebekah, God said, in your belly are two nations and they will fight with each other. You know, in some ways it was written in the stars, so to speak, but that doesn't make an excuse. People have to take responsibility for their actions. But the problem is sometimes for religious obedience, morality gets changed. That is a problem.
And that brings us to what is called the Avion Conference.
The Avion Conference.
And that was in 1938.
1938.
Tell me about that.
In France. And that was a conference where delegates from a number of nations came to express sympathy for the Jewish people who were seeking to flee from the Nazi occupation. Jews, they couldn't stay where they were. They were being hunted. This is before the Second World War. Hard to believe how bad what's going on in America today. We're being hunted, Brandon. We are being hunted.
That's right.
So many Jews fled, and so they met at Evian to discuss what to do. And basically, they put out a call to the nations. Who is willing to take Jewish people in? And you know, then of course there was, you know, all kinds of excuses. We don't have room. We don't have, you know, this came a little bit later. This came actually after the Second World War began. But do you know the Australian government? Do you know what they said, Brandon? They said, here in Australia, we don't have an immigration problem, and we don't want to invite one either.
Well, this conference met in July of 1938. And of course, you know what happened in November of 1938. That was the night of Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, which is where which many would say was the start of the Holocaust, breaking the Jewish shop owners' windows, dragging all of the men off. And so here they were meeting in July to try to say, hey, help some of these Jews get out of this problem, because it was quite evident before the Holocaust started that this was going to happen. They say no, including America, who's now turned away the USS St. Louis.
Yes. America were reluctant. They were not happy.
And July, they're meeting, the Avion Conference. And by November of that year, the Holocaust gets underway with the night of the broken glass, Kristallnacht.
Kristallnacht. 1,400 synagogues were burned in Germany alone. And books were burned, synagogues, buildings. Terrible night, the night of the broken glass, Kristallnacht.
I want to just make sure I give you the date again for let's see here. I'll give you the date that the ship set sail. Yeah, May of 39. So the next year, May of 39, bring more than 900 Jews. The MS St. Louis the next year. And America was one of the countries that said no. And I think that was in part because there was a Catholic priest on the television by the name of Father Coughlin that was very popular in America, preaching a lot of anti-Semitism.
Really? The other thing that I read once was at that period, Brandon, the late 30s, apparently in America there was a lot of racial tension, blacks, whites as well. So that didn't help. There was a lot of unease going on in the land. But let's, something that I didn't bring up that is also very important.
Let me just mention this real quick. After making attacks on Jewish bankers, Coughlin began to use his radio program, Golden Hour, to broadcast anti-Semitic commentary. In the late 1930s, he supported some of the policies of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. The broadcasts have been described as a, quote, variation of the fascist agenda applied to American culture, end quote. His chief topics were political and economic rather than religious, using the slogan social justice.
Brandon, how can a Catholic priest do that?
Right.
He's got blood on his hands.
Yep. And so that is in the bloodstream of the American people. Listening to this guy was very popular on radio. And you see why then they turn around in 1939 and don't take the Jews in on the MS St. Louis.
You know, our actions and our statements, there are consequences.
What were you going to say next?
Yeah, something also going back a little bit at this period, as the Jewish threat was growing and Jews were fleeing. And remember, the British Mandate and the Balfour Declaration, it started off wonderful. It started off like a honeymoon. The Jewish people have the freedom to come back to their ancient homeland. But as the Arabs who were living in the land started to resist, the British started to renege, heavily renege. And like we said, many Jews that made it to the ports of Palestine were sent away. But there was a movement. We talked yesterday about the Hebrew word aliyah, which means immigration. So in Hebrew, the first letter of the alphabet is Aleph, or A. So that was the first immigration. But then there was something called Aliyah Bet, which is the second letter, which was illegal immigration. There's lots of stories of boats that did make it to the shores, and they somehow were able to smuggle themselves in. And I remember one story hearing about a Jewish lady who was British. She worked for the British, but she was Jewish, and she knew what was going on. She knew that the British were turning these Jews away, and she was somehow able to manipulate the documents and everything so that the British somehow turned the other way, and Jewish immigrants illegally were able to get into the land. But there is a place, that factory that we saw before, that actually became a prison for some of those illegal immigrants who made it, but they weren't allowed to come in, so they were put in prisons in that place. It's called Atlit.
So let's move now to the UN SCOP, or UNSCOP. I don't know if there's a way of saying that acronym, but what it stands for is United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, and that was created in May of 1947. And I guess the goal was to consider, what are we going to do? We got this British rule there. We got problems. Are we going to partition? What are we going to do, right?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up UNSCOP because, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
UNSCOP? Is that how you say it?
UNSCOP, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the United Nations. This is when the United Nations started to get their hands into the situation and get involved. And maybe it was with good intentions to begin with. But once again, what's the neighborhood, Brandon? This small little place with a few hundred thousand.
Size of New Jersey, Israel.
Well, actually, back then it was smaller because it didn't have East Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, or the Golan Heights. It was even smaller.
Wow. And yet they have all of the Middle East.
And so the United Nations, they came into the region. You've got, at this stage, you've only got a few 100,000 Jews. You've got about at least 150 million Arabs in the region. So who are the United Nations going to be swayed by? A few 100,000 fleeing Jews or 1.5 million angry Arabs. And see, this is the problem. This is where the United Nations getting involved in that, like I said, while it was a great idea, you're going to get bullied. You're going to get bullied. And if you don't stand your ground, you're going to get killed. So what we see time and time again, the United Nations organizations, see what happened once UNSCOP came in, the Arab higher committees, they boycotted this commission. They used pressure and manipulation, refusing to get involved in any of this. And so as a result, Jews were left pretty much defenseless, whereas the the UNSCOP should have come on and helped them. And this is, of course, the story of Exodus. This is where,
Are you familiar at all with John Stanley Graul, or Groel, Grauel?
not sure.
He's also nicknamed John the Priest. He was a Methodist minister, an American Christian Zionist leader. He was a crew member of the Aliyah Bet ship,
Exodus, which is illegal immigration.
Exodus 1947, and a secret Haganah operative.
Yes.
Groel is sometimes credited with being the key individual who persuaded the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, the one we're talking about, to recommend for the partition resolution of November 1947, creating the State of Israel. In a speech to the Jewish Agency, Golda Meir referred to his testimony as the first appeal by a priest, a perfectly worthy Gentile. A priori, no Jewish witness was to be believed.
Beautiful.
So in other words, your former prime minister, Golda Meir, credited him for helping us establish the Jewish state.
Beautiful. And there were a few evangelical
He was from
Christians.
America. He was born in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1917, which is so ironic. The year the letter was written to Rothschild by Lord Balfour.
Yes. And Massachusetts, no, that's not where Golda Meir lived, was it? Massachusetts?
Did she come here?
She lived here.
Was she born here?
No, she was born, I believe it was in Poland.
Okay.
But she came to America when she was 3 years old. I think she lived in Massachusetts.
Well, let me look it up.
Or,
all right. Wow. Born into a Ukrainian Jewish family in Kiev, Russian Empire, Meir immigrated with her family to the United States in 1906. She graduated from the Milwaukee State Normal School and found work as a teacher. While in Milwaukee, she embraced the labor Zionist movement. In 1921, Meir and her husband immigrated to mandatory Palestine. Wow.
And if you go to Milwaukee, there's a school called the Golda Meir School and the library, Golda Meir Library, named after her. But actually, do you know what I heard recently, Brandon? That it was painted or anti-Semites attacked it.
Wow.
But another evangelical Christian that I texted you earlier today was a man, and this is going back before the British Mandate. This is going back about 20 years. A Christian evangelical Zionist called Orde, O-R-D-E, short for Gordon, Orde Wingate. Orde Wingate, who was a bit of a charismatic Christian back then, he loved the Jewish people. He learned to speak Hebrew, and he believed in the scriptures that one day the Jewish people will return. He was guilty, and I use that word guilty in a positive way, of helping train up some of these underground gangs that we talked about. And he taught them warfare from the Bible. And there's a special place in the Jezreel Valley called the Valley of Harod, the story of Gideon and the 300 men. And he took them there and he trained them up. And there today, Brandon, there is a sports institution called the Wingate Institution, and it's named after that evangelical Christian Orde Wingate.
Isn't that
He is a hero. And by the way, the end of that story, he was on a plane and the plane crashed and he was killed. And it's highly believed that the British took them out. Because, like I said, with the Balfour Declaration, it all started off like a honeymoon. It started great. The British are for a Jewish homeland. But as the Arab pressure started to push on the British started to renege. And then you've got people like Ord Wingate still singing the praises of the Jews. It was too much for the British officers, and they took them out. That's the believed story.
And that brings us really to the issue of the boat Exodus. It was renamed the Exodus, 1947. And it was renamed that and to take part in what we've been calling Aliyah.
Aliyah, absolutely.
And she took about 4,500 and some odd Jewish migrants from France to mandatory Palestine.
Yeah.
And most of them were Holocaust survivors.
Absolutely.
But they didn't have, I don't think they had their certificates, the immigration certificates for Palestine.
And
so the Royal Navy boarded them. And this is what this movie is about, right?
Absolutely.
With
Paul Newman.
Paul Newman.
Yeah. And sadly, a lot of them had they either had their properties and certificates burned, or they had to rush and leave in a hurry, and they couldn't hardly bring everything. So they had no papers, and sadly they were either imprisoned or, in this case, they were turned away, and only 1,000 survived on that ship. The rest perished. Terrible story.
All right, so that brings us now to November 29th, 1947. 57 governments voting in public with a recorded roll call. And I have video of this, I believe.
There is a video. I've seen it where they're all sitting around their radios, or as they call them in Britain, they're wireless. Did they call that in America, wireless?
I don't know. I wasn't around then.
No, of course you weren't around.
But here, watch this little black and white video we have. Watch this. Okay, April, that was on Friday the 15th.
Friday the 5th.
Friday the 5th.
Or 14th of May.
Okay, 14th of May, 1948. Are you understanding that in Hebrew?
Yeah. All the guests came to the building on Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv. They were asked to keep the reason of the invitation, the ceremony, a secret. But when they came, half of the city was awaiting for them. This is in Tel Aviv. That is on.
So let me just stop right there. This was supposed to be secret.
Yeah, it was.
But the word got out.
Everyone got out. Everyone got out.
And half the city is there, I guess.
Absolutely.
Right?
By the way, Brandon, if you come to Israel, I can take you to this very house where it happened. It's now called the Museum of Independence. It was at the house of the mayor of Tel Aviv called Meir Dizengoff. That street, Herzl Boulevard. So all the politicians and lawyers and high echelon came secretly, but word got out.
So around 4 p.m., David Ben-Gurion.
And it was on a Friday afternoon just before Shabbat.
And remind everybody who David Ben-Gurion
David
is.
Ben-Gurion he was going to be the first elected prime minister. He was the leader of a major national party in Israel. And he was kind of delegated to be the leader of the nation. And of course, once he declared, which he's going to do in a minute, then they made him officially the prime minister. So it's on
there
the Friday.
All his life were a journey to this moment. We can go back to the audio if we want to hear it. That's fine.
Yeah.
This is the natural right of the Jewish people.
This is him declaring the Declaration
to be like
of
any
Independence.
other nation, stand on its own in his sovereign state. That will open the gate of her homeland to every Jew.
Brandon,
Just
just
stop right there for a minute.
because there's something you need to know about this moment, this very moment. The British had just pulled out. The British were here for 30 years. They were in so much danger being in the middle of a war between the Jews and the Arabs. The British pulled out. Ben-Gurion and his men seized this opportunity, and they said, we must take it. But the danger is that a lot of people were saying to Ben-Gurion, if you declare independence, you are going to invite a war. All the nations surrounding, they're going to war against us. He had this decision to make. We're going to look and see what he did.
He wanted to grant the Jewish people an equal status of rights among other nations. So we gathered the members of the People's Council, representatives of the Jewish Yeshiva and the Yeshuv and the Zionist movement on the completion day of the British mandate over the land of Israel,
The day they left,
by the virtue of our historical and natural right, and based on United Nations General Assembly resolution, we declare the establishment of a Jewish state in Israel. We declare on the establishment of a Jewish state in Israel, the state of Israel.
wow, pause it there, Brennan.
Okay?
This almost brings me to tears because this was such a historical moment. First time in 2,000 years, in our homeland, he declares it, boldly declares it. This vacuum, just as the British have left, the danger surrounding. You know, remember the Jewish people that we saw on the streets. These are Holocaust survivors. These are people that have just left everything. There's no water. There's no army. By the way, all of those underground gangs that we talked about, when Ben-Gurion took to power, he said, okay, now we are the government. All of you underground gangs, hand over your weapons to the government. They wouldn't do it. And so there was almost a civil war. And there's a story of one Jewish gang. They were on a boat. They came into the port in Tel Aviv. Ben-Gurion and his men said, before we let you into the port, hand over your weapons. They wouldn't do it. There was a standoff. You know what Ben-Gurion did? He blew the boat up and he killed his own people.
How many?
Don't know the number. I can't remember. But he had to lay down authority.
In other words, he was established a government, and now you need to obey.
Now you
have
need to
have
obey.
the rule of law.
You have to
can't
have the
have
rule of law.
warring factions and gangs,
Yeah.
and one group claiming to be the authority and another group claiming to be the authority. This will never have a civilized society based on a common rule of law if that happens.
Yeah. So you've got these Holocaust survivors. That's basically the nation. And like I said, nothing is organized yet. There's no schools. There's no hospitals. They're all out in the fields. They're all makeup. There's no hardly any water. There's no labor union or anything like that. Did I say no hospitals, no education, no established government.
Infrastructure, really.
No infrastructure. People often ask me, out of all the prime ministers, just like out of all the presidents, who do I like, who do I admire the most? For me, Ben-Gurion, because he didn't just have to stand up and declare our independence. It was more than that. He had the whole nation.
To build a nation.
He had to build a nation. He had the whole nation on his shoulders. He had to implement all the things that I mentioned: hospitals, health, water, an army. He had to organize all that. And it was with a sick people, Holocaust survivors. They were carrying all of this baggage from Europe. Most of them, Menachem Begin had lost every one of his 50 members in his family. Now, what happened, and I'm getting a little bit ahead, but I think it's good to bring it up now while we're on it. The day after he declares this, sure enough, the 8 Muslim nations attack us. But we had no weapons. So the newly formed German government offered us money as part of the Holocaust reparations. Now, what would you do, Brandon? Are you going to take money from the German government? They've just murdered our people. And Ben-Gurion said, I've got no choice. We need money. We need to buy weapons. And they blew up the Knesset. They blew up the government in opposition. They said, you will never take money from these Germans. And Ben-Gurion, he stood alone. What is he going to do? Is he going to listen to the nation? Because the whole nation was against taking money. And Ben-Gurion took the money. And he was able to purchase weapons from the Czechs. It was the Czechs. And that helped them survive this about
Now,
8
why was
months.
Germany offering this money?
It was part of the reparations.
Okay.
This is the newly formed German government. So, but this was a very intense moment. There was so much at stake. It was very vulnerable. And when you look back at this moment, Brandon, it's a miracle we got through it. But look where we've come to today. It's an incredible moment in history. This was the birth. It's almost like, a woman 2,000-3,000 years ago. Do you know the chances of a baby being born were very slim? A lot of babies died, or a lot of women died giving birth. And this is exactly this is the moment of birth. But was it going to actually happen, or was it going to be a, what do you call it when a baby dies?
Before they're born or after?
No, after.
A stillborn.
Yeah, like a stillborn or something like that. There was every chance that it wasn't going to happen, but they took that step. Very brave. Ben Gurion, for me, what a man! What a strong, courageous man.
So tell me about the war. You guys declare you're a nation, and how many Arab nations attack you?
Well, there were basically 8. The 3 main ones were, of course, Syria, Egypt, and Jordan. But you've got other Arab nations, including Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, I believe Yemen was the other one, and Libya. I think Libya were part of it as well.
And how long did that last?
And that lasted about 6 to 8 months. And it's called the War of Independence.
And of course, how on earth does this little nation defeat those people?
We were able, with the money that was given by the German government, to purchase weapons from the Czechs. And there were a number of Jews around the world, including American Jews, who left their everything and came and fought for the newly formed Jewish state. And there's another Hollywood movie, famous Hollywood movie about this. It's called Cast a Giant Shadow. And it's with 4 big actors: John Wayne, Yul Brynner, Frank Sinatra, and Kirk Douglas.
Big actors.
And Kirk Douglas,
I've seen it, yeah.
Kirk Douglas played the hero of the story, a Jewish man called Mickey Marcus, who found a bypass road where the Jewish people who were fighting over Jerusalem, they were able to get their ammunition and supplies up to the Jews in Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. So that's another Hollywood movie.
There's also a movie or a documentary, I think it was made about this, where a bunch of these American pilots who are Jewish, and some of them who weren't Jewish, who had been pilots during the war, I think World War II, obviously, and they came to fight for you guys. And somehow you guys got planes.
Don't know that story. Another good story, there's a very famous Jewish author called Chaim Potok. And one of his stories is called The Chosen, not like the movie series The Chosen. It's called The Chosen.
Yeah.
And it's a movie. I actually sent it to you a while ago. I'll send it again.
Okay.
A brilliant movie about this very moment, because, Brandon, and this also needs to be brought out, the religious Jews at this time were against the establishment of the state of Israel. They were against it. They were not Zionist. They believed that only when the Messiah comes first, then we can make our way back to the homeland, Aliyah. So they believed that, and some of them still do today, that what happened in 1948 was a work of the flesh. God was not in it. Only when the Messiah comes will there be a state. So they were actually against the formation of the state of Israel. And that book, if anyone's interested, or the movie, is called The Chosen. The author, Chaim Potok, P-O-T-O-K.
Not to be confused with the other series.
No, not to be confused with the series. And it is a great book and a great movie, and some great actors, Rod Steiger, Maximilian Schnell, really good tear-jerking story about the formation of the State of Israel. And it's basically about a religious Jewish son who became friends with a secular Jewish son. They became friends, but their fathers, or the religious father was against their friendship because he knew that the secular father was fighting for the formation of the State of Israel, and he did not agree with it. So there's a lot of tension in that movie, but really good entertainment.
So I want to read something. In 1948, just 3 years after the liberation of the Nazi death camps, a ragtag group of skilled American pilots, both Jewish and non-Jewish, answered a call for help. In secret and at great personal risk, they smuggled planes out of the U.S., trained behind the Iron Curtain, and flew for Israel in the War of Independence.
Beautiful.
This band of brothers not only turned the tide of the war, they also embarked on personal journeys of discovery and pride. I remember watching this a few years ago. It is a Netflix documentary, or at least it was on Netflix. It's called Above and Beyond. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Would you like to see the trailer?
I would.
Let me show you the trailer. Above and Beyond. Everybody should go see it. I watched it. Here we go.
I grew up in an age of very virulent anti-Semitism.
I didn't deny my Judaism, but I wasn't happy about being Jewish. What changed me was knowing what Hitler did to the Jews.
I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do this.
It was desperation time in Palestine, and I said, look, I know there's going to be a war there, and I'm a fighter pilot, and I want to go there.
The 1948 war was the most significant of the Israeli-Arab wars.
It was a matter of life and death.
I was going to help the Jews out. I was going to help my people out.
We landed at Natal, Brazil, got to Casablanca, Rome. We had to run of the town.
We weren't looking for trouble, but we were always looking for action.
We were young, good looking, had hair. We had a lot of testosterone, and we didn't want to waste it.
The airplane just sunk like this.
We were flying Molotov cocktail. I knew, that's it. You're going to die.
You want to stop us, shoot us down.
I knew what had happened to other downed pilots, and I wasn't going to be taken prisoner.
I said to the guys, we will never surrender. There will not be another Holocaust.
Maybe God spared us in World War II so that we could help the remnants of our people survive.
I was born to be here in that moment of history.
Everybody
I
should
haven't
see
heard
it.
of that. How
Oh, it's
come
an
I haven't
amazing
seen it?
film.
I've gotta see that.
Everybody should see it. And some of them were non-Jewish American pilots who had learned and were great skilled fighter pilots who joined and died, gave their life. How they got the planes. I mean, the whole story is,
I got to see that.
you got to see it. Everyone should watch it. It's Above and Beyond. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but everybody should see it. Okay, so that brings us, as we're trying to wrap this up here, November 29th. Well, let me go to a little clip here because we have Harry S. Truman discusses the recognition of Israel. And I think he had a soft spot for the Jewish people because if I remember correctly, he had a business partner that was Jewish. Listen to this. Watch this footage here.
I also antagonized a lot of people by recognizing the State of Israel as soon as it was formed. Well, I had been to Potsdam, and I had seen some of the places where the Jews had been slaughtered by the Nazis. 6 million Jews were killed outright, men, women, and children, by the Nazis. And it was my hope that they would have a homeland where they could operate. So when the time came for that, we set up the Israeli government in Palestine, moved some of the Arabs out, and they were not moved out and thrown out. They were compensated for the land that they had to give up. The Jews organized a government over there, and it's been a successful one ever since. They've done things over there that never have been done in that part of the world before. And then while it's a small republic, it's an energetic one. Not long ago, they had a fuss with Egypt. And if they hadn't been interfered with by the then President of the United States, Nasser would have been down in the Sudan where he belongs. That won't help diplomatic relations.
That won't help diplomatic relations.
What a character.
Oh, my. All right. I want to go to another topic real quick. We've already touched on it. And that was in 1948. We have the creation of the State of Israel. But we also have the King David Hotel bombing. Watch this little bit, and then you give me your thoughts on this history. Here we go.
My father was at the doorstep of the building and looked at his watch, and he said, "It's too early now. I'm going to come and have lunch at the YMCA anyway." Just as soon as he left, he hardly got away, a kilometer away, and the building was gone.
The King David Hotel was the headquarters of the British government in Palestine. Its bombing in 1946 by the Irgun was by far the largest attack in the Zionist campaign against the British and was a massive shock to Palestine. It left 91 people dead, including Britons, Arabs, and Jews.
My mother came to us and she said, go on your knees and thank the Lord that your father was spared.
Okay, so that was 1946, right?
Correct.
1946. Now, we're going back a little bit, but tell me about that. Who did that and why?
So by 1946, like I mentioned earlier, the British had pretty much stopped protecting the Jewish people. So the Jewish people, when I say the Jewish people, the Jewish underground gang, so they had to go down underground to defend themselves. As Jewish immigration started to get more and more and more because of the Holocaust, the Arab resistance got stronger and stronger and stronger. The British, they saw the handwriting on the wall. They said, we're in the middle of a war here. We don't need to be here. We need to get out. But they didn't leave. This was still a British mandate, Palestine. And they were under pressure. They didn't know whether they were going to stay. They didn't know what to do. And so one of the Jewish underground gangs sent a letter to the King David Hotel. The King David Hotel was the British headquarters right in the heart of Jerusalem. And they basically said, we've got a bomb. Be warned. Get out. And all kinds of rumors, they didn't take it seriously. They thought it was maybe a scare tactic. They didn't get out, Brandon, and the bomb blew up. We saw some of the footage. 91 people were killed. And in many ways, okay, the aftermath, the British, they put a lot of restrictions. They tightened security. But basically, that was the main, or the kind of the last domino catalyst to help the British make the decision, we need to get out of here. Now, who did it? The two names that were basically high up on the list was Menachem Begin, who went on to become your prime minister. Who went on to become our prime minister. He actually was the #1 most wanted man in the Middle East at one stage by the British. The other man that his name was put toward that was Yitzhak Shamir, who also would later become the prime minister. He was the leader of another underground gang. So I don't know if I've never heard that come out. Definitely we know who it was, but they are the two names that were high.
And of course,
on the
that's
list.
used to try to say that, here you go, the Jews themselves are a bunch of terrorists, right?
Well, like I said to you
In
earlier,
fact, look at this old black and white footage. What's it titled? Terrorist attack
Terrorist attack
Jerusalem.
on
I mean, this is old black and white British news feed. Watch this real quick, and you can comment.
After a bomb explosion caused by terrorists on the British headquarters at Jerusalem, one entire corner of the King David Hotel, a building of 7 stories, was razed to the ground. The stone floors were cut clean away as if they'd been hit by a 1,000-pound bomb from above. Housed in the destroyed wing were the greater part of the government offices where work was in full swing at the time of the outrage. Men of the army and the police were working with cranes, bulldozers, drills and shovels to reach the unfortunate victims still buried in the wreckage. The latest casualty list included 65 killed, 47 injured and 58 missing, though it is doubtful if any of those missing are still alive. Once more, the civilized world has received a rude shock at the hands of fanatics whose wanton act is contrary to the dictates of all creeds alike and imperils the best interests of the cause that it strives to promote.
Following the bomb outrage on the King David Hotel, Jerusalem comes under the most rigorous curfew in the history of the Palestine troubles. On the stroke of 6 each evening, all streets are cleared by British military forces and police. Barbed wire barriers are in place at 0 hour as the troops prepare for another night of vigilance in Jerusalem under curfew.
Wow. Comment.
So, Brandon, you asked the question,
It's all right.
are they
Next video coming up.
Are they terrorists? You know, there's an old saying, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. I know that there were a number, the majority of the Jews condemned that. And actually, if I remember correctly, it could have even been Menachem Begin who condemned it. So maybe it wasn't him and his party that were guilty. I personally disagree with the methods using. I do believe it is a form of terrorism. I actually do. So I don't agree with the methods. It may have worked, but I believe it would have worked another way. So I don't, you know, the old saying, the ends justify the means. No, they don't. I don't agree with that. Even though it worked out for our good, I do not agree with the way they did it. But that's just my opinion. It happened. The British then decided to leave, and then we saw the video of David Ben-Gurion, May 14th in Tel Aviv, declaring our independent state, and then 8 Muslim nations declaring war on us. And this is the birth pangs, the birth pains, and the formation, you know, of our very tiny little nation back then. These are just very emotional, very delicate, tense, intense moment in history. And I think it says in Isaiah 66, can a nation be born in a day? Yet no sooner is Zion in labor than she gives birth to her children. And many people quote that verse. Can a nation be born in a day? Well, you know, May 14th, 1948, something that we celebrate every year, our Independence Day, and to proclaim our Declaration of Independence. And of course, after the declaration, everyone stood up and they sang our national anthem, which is called the Hatikva, which means the hope. And in our national anthem, It talks about for 2,000 years how we've longed, we've yearned to come back home to Jerusalem and Zion. And they're singing it. And by the way, if you go to that museum where Ben-Gurion declared that, another museum I can take you to, that you will sit in the very seats where all the people sat, and the guides there, they will run you through what was going on, and then it's building up, and then they will show that video of Ben-Gurion, and then everyone stands up and we sing the national anthem. It's very, very moving museum.
And then, so we have that situation with the King David Hotel. And that is used to say, again, the Jews, well, they don't have clean hands. They've been involved in terrorist bombings and killing innocent people. But, we've discussed it, right? We're not saying it was right.
No.
I mean, America is filled. Look how Americans treated a lot of the Indians, a lot of the Native Americans, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of things on our side. Look how we treated many, many Black Americans in our own country, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
every country has its sins.
Yes.
Because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That doesn't mean the entire country, the entire nation, everything it's ever done is therefore an evil nation, right?
And it's a really good point you bring up, because I've often thought about this. God's prophetic word, Brandon, is out there in space and time. When he says that I'm going to gather you back and you're going to become a nation. So that space and time is already there. How it happens is us sinful humans working it all out.
Yeah. And that's the difference between man's free will and God's providence. There's God's moral will, his moral will, but we lost our way with sin in the garden and the fall and original sin. But there's the moral will, and then there is his providential will, what he allows to happen or what he doesn't allow to happen, right?
Yeah.
And then in that tension, you have man's free will.
Yes.
So you've God's providential guidance, God's moral will, his providence, his sovereignty, all powerful, and then man's free will. And God can and does use man's sinful actions to accomplish his purpose. And we see that with Moses. We see that with Joseph's brothers.
Yes.
What God meant, or what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Joseph says to them that I might preserve the line.
Yes. And
right?
notice what Joseph said. What you meant for evil, God turned for good. When Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, he said, I am Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. He had forgiven them from his heart, but he reminded them what they did.
Right.
And it was evil. What you meant for evil, it was evil. But in the sovereignty of God, he turned it for good. But that doesn't excuse what you've done.
Right. And
there are consequences.
And with slavery in America, it was horrible, horrific, evil, wrong.
Yeah.
But, there are many, many families, many Black American families today that are believers, Christians, evangelists, pastors, great people of faith. But God maybe used that. He didn't agree with it, but God was able to use it to bring the gospel to who knows how many millions that may have been without the gospel in a lost in pagan culture and land, right? That doesn't justify it, doesn't make it right. But God can use and does use even the simple choices of man.
And Brennan, the greatest example of what you're saying is the cross.
Yeah.
The sinless Son of God was crucified by the Romans, by the Jews who handed him over. All of us are guilty. So that's Paul's argument in Romans. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But then he goes on and he says, the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life through our Lord and Savior, Yeshua, Jesus.
Right. So you have the King David Hotel, that bombing that's used to say, see, the Jews are a bunch of terrorists anyway. They're no better. Here they're blaming all the Muslims, and they're terrorists. They're jihadists in their own kind of way. And I know that's used, but we've been trying to bring perspective and background to this, right?
Yes.
It'd just be like saying all Americans are a bunch of racist murderers and enslavers,
right?
Because some people in the past did these things, which most Americans had no part in slavery. And many, many Americans died opposing slavery. And many, many Christians stood up against it, right? And still stand up against many evils in the world. Well, there was another incident that occurred as we get ready to wrap here tonight, and that was on June 8th, 1967. And it was when the Israeli Air Force and torpedo boats of the Israeli Navy went after the U.S. ship, the USS Liberty. And in that, 34 American crew members were killed, and there was 174 or so that were wounded. That's used again. See how evil, and I see it used online, social media. But what people don't tell you is that, hey, it was mistaken identity. The Israeli government came out and apologized for the attack, and they had mistaken it for an Egyptian ship. And when they figured out what was going on, they rushed in to help. And they ended up paying, I think, close to $13 million in restitution. Your government did.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah. I think it's like 100, that would be like 100 and, probably 130 something million today. So people don't give the full context when they tell these stories.
Right. But why, Brannon? People that when a Jew does something or a group of Jews does something or the Jewish government makes a mistake, why are we judged so heavily? And again, this is why Paul, when he wrote to the Roman church, he makes it clear all have sinned. We're all equal. There's no one person or one nation that you could actually look at and say, our nation is better than yours or your nation is worse. We're all the same. But that's, like you referred, that's political Israel. There is spiritual Israel. There is God. And Paul says, we Jews, we are loved for the sake of the patriarchs. And God made it clear. He said, I've not chosen you Jews because you're a better people. He says you're a stiff-necked people. So God is actually agreeing with a lot of people who are critical of the Jews. God says, you're a stiff-necked people. But he says, I've chosen you because I love you. It's a divine choice. And that's, again, Paul's argument. Jacob have I loved, Esau have I, who are you? Does the clay argue to the potter? Why did you make me like that? This is Paul's argument. Who are we to argue with Almighty God?
Yeah. And I think what we've shown over the last 2 days is that a lot of these decisions that brought about the nation of Israel again in 48, as prophesied in the Old Testament that would happen, a political revival in the dry bones prophecy of Ezekiel 37. And now we await the spiritual revival, which is starting to happen because here's a Messianic Jewish man right here. But every one of these decisions that led to the creation of the modern state of Israel, again, as a government, a functioning government, these decisions were made by governments. They were made by majority votes of many nations. We talked about that with the Balfour Declaration. We talked about it with the San Remo Conference. And they were made by a lot of people and a lot of men that were not Jewish.
Yeah.
So this is not a hidden record.
Yep.
It simply needs to be read and understood, and we've laid it out.
Yep. And alongside what you just said, where there were a lot of nations, a lot of Gentiles as well, who were in agreement, alongside that narrative, Brannon, is another narrative, and that is all along the way there was resistance by Muslims, by Arab Muslims who would not refuse, going back to the 1800s, going back for centuries, Muslim rule. This group of people who believe that they are the superior religion and that land is theirs. And this is a problem that we have until today, this resistance. In fact, it even goes back to the days of Nehemiah. When Nehemiah came back with the returnees, they began to rebuild, and even he had resistance. But what did he do? It says they worked with one hand, they had a sword in the other hand. That's where we are in 2026. We're building up. The infrastructure is incredible, what we're doing. We've got a great army. We've got great economy. We've got great agriculture, medicine, science. Per capita, We are by far the country with the most Nobel Prizes, by far. It's a miracle. It's a miracle where we've come from. Do you know there's another museum? It's the Navy Museum. Brandon, if I took you there, what they do, the first thing they show you is Israel's first boat. It's a little wooden boat that about 3 people can fit in. That's our very first boat. And then at the end of that museum, you've got submarines, you've got massive ships, not as big as the United States, but it just shows where we have come from. It's been hard work. It's been a lot of help, a lot of support from the United States, from other peoples, but there's the unseen God that is behind it. This is part of his story. And it's just such a thrill to be, we're living in a generation, we're the generation after the rebirth of the state of Israel. Do you know how many generations have prayed and hoped to see the rebirth of Israel? And they didn't. But we saw it. We're the generation after. This story is far from over.
Yeah, it sure is.
And we're part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to play one more clip, Aaron. This is 1967, the liberation of Jerusalem. We already talked about the partitioning of the land, and you guys didn't have East Jerusalem.
No.
The Temple Mount.
No.
But this happened. Here we go, guys. Let me play this, 1967.
אנחנו יושבים על הרכב שצופה אל העיר העתיקה ועוד מעט אנחנו נוטים להיכנס אליה. העיר העתיקה של ירושלים שמאז כל הדורות חותמים עליה ושואפים אליה. אנחנו נהיה הראשונים להיכנס אליה.
It's the Temple Mount.
That's the Temple Mount right there.
That's the Temple Mount. The first time in almost 2,000 years that we took it over on June 1967.
That's when Jordan attacked you while you were fighting Egypt.
Exactly.
They wouldn't back off and you took it.
המדרגות אל הכותל. אינני אדם דתי, מעולם לא הייתי. אבל זהו הכותל, ואני נוגע באבני הכותל המערבי.
That's a typical prayer to say, thank God that we've arrived at this day, at this moment.
Were you guys not allowed to? Were you not allowed to go to those spots?
No, not up to the Temple Mount. There was only one small section at the Western Wall to pray, and it was actually called the Wailing Wall,
right,
where we went for generations to weep because the destruction of the temple, there's no temple, so they gave us a small little section that we were allowed to go and pray at.
But that's it.
And that's
until
it.
67.
Until 67.
Well, people ask me, Brian, why do the Jews rock back and forth like that when they pray at the wall? Why?
There's a few reasons. The main reason, it says in the book of Proverbs, actually there's 2 verses. One is, I will prostrate myself before you. And there's another mysterious proverb. It says, the candle of the Lord, the spirit of a man is the candle of the Lord. I'll say it again. The spirit of a man is the candle of the Lord. I don't quite understand it. There's a belief that if our spirit is the candle of the Lord, like Paul says, our spirit bears witness with his spirit. So the idea of rocking is to stir up that candle, that flame. So when you're praying, you're moving, you're stirring up that candle, and you're stirring your spirit at the same time. The spirit of the man is the candle of the Lord.
But the first reason is it's also a way of bowing.
I will prostrate myself before you.
Oh. Aaron, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon. I to relive these memories, even though I'm there and I take groups around, and I do, being here to do it with you has been fascinating. We've gone pretty deep, and I hope it's helped educate people, and hopefully anyone that questions the validity of the state of Israel, can see it through documents, through legal measures that we've gone about. Yes, there have been some wrong ways, the bombing of the King David Hotel, but I always go back to that argument. We're a tiny little piece of land. We're surrounded by 122 times larger land mass than this tiny little place called Israel. God chose it. That's the place he chose to put his name there. We know that, there's more than meets the eye. We know that there are spiritual forces. Like I quoted before, when Ishmael was born, he will fight against his brothers, Jacob and Esau, two nations. They will fight against each other. The scriptures say all the nations will come against this little piece of land, Jerusalem, Israel. But God is watching over that land. That is the apple of his eye. He who touches Jerusalem is going to get wounded. So that's why we're called to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for Israel.
Which really means praying for the Lord to return, because that's when there's going to be peace. It's really
peace.
It's really the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. That's not going to happen to the millennium. So when we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, we're praying for the millennial kingdom.
I totally agree. We work towards peace, but at the same time, we know it's never going to happen totally until the Lord comes. But the other thing is Genesis 12, when God said to Abraham, Abraham, I will bless you and I will bless those who bless you. So I always say, bless Israel, bless what God has blessed, and the blessing will come back on you.
Yeah.
It's a win-win situation.
Can I tell you this network has experienced that? I and my family have personally experienced
I believe that.
Do you know the blessings that have come to our family over the last many years and really increased? It's very interesting. The more that anti-Semitism becomes accepted, and we've lost a lot of friends, broadcast partners, people that we will no longer interview because they've become so anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And as we have lost people, we have lost friendships, anti-Semitism has become mainstreamed and accepted, and we continue to stand up against it. And do you realize that in this environment, we are stronger as an organization, as a broadcast network?
Praise the Lord.
The blessings that have come to us over and over again, I think are one reason why is because of the fulfillment of Genesis 12, verse 3.
I believe that, Brandon, but I also believe deep down that you've paid a price, because to stand for Israel, to stand for the Jewish people these days especially, is costly.
Mm-hmm.
When I arrived at your house a couple of weeks ago and I saw that Israeli flag outside, it brought a touch to my heart, and I'm so blessed with this ministry, organization, and those who support, those who bless and stand with us, and I pray a blessing back. And,
Well, let me ask you this. You have your phone?
I do.
Can you check your phone? Did you get something from us?
Yeah, I did.
Did you?
So much. I got some financial support. Wow. Thank you very much, Brandon.
And that came because you guys support us, we can support him. He's given 2 days to us, folks. And we've got a wonderful 2 days of programming that we can play over and over again, because this is going to be, an evergreen program. It won't go out of date.
Amen.
And it'll go to our Israel channel.
Yes.
For those who don't know, we bought the URL, theisraelchannel.com. Couldn't believe it was available. It doesn't work yet, but we own it. And very soon, in the next week or two, we'll be launching the Israel channel, because Aaron and I have done enough programming and are continuing to do programming. And with our Holocaust Horizon conference we did in 2018 with Olivier Melnick, with Arnold Frutenbaum, and so many others, we have so much programming we can do on Israel that we need a full-time Israel channel. And if you're a premium member, you'll be able to join. And yet here we are putting it out there for everybody. So as you support us through our foundation, we're able to support him. He's going to be doing more regular work with us and tours and teaching, because he doesn't really have much of a job over there with the tourism falling apart. And yet we need him, as you've seen the last few days again. And so we have so many wonderful things that we can produce and educate people around the world. But we need your support. And we just sent him, I brought my computer here a while ago. You might have seen me with it sitting in front of me. What I was doing was sending him a quick love offering, because a workman is worthy of his hire. He's given 2 days to us, folks. And this is great programming to reach a lot of people, and maybe reach your own children and your grandchildren who have been told so many lies. And we've laid it out tonight. And we've even mentioned things that were not real positive, like what happened with the USS Liberty, what happened with the King David Hotel.
Right.
But we've laid it out. And we have to put it in context, just as we have to put things in context with our history and our background that are not good in America.
And you know, Brennan, there were a lot of Jews who collaborated with the Nazis as well. You know?
There were known as the Jewish police that were loading their own people onto the trains.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of hard, painful stories. Yeah. But we're here and the story continues. We're going to be part of that. We got to fasten our seatbelts for the ride. It's going to be bumpy, but the Lord is with us. And just like he was with Nehemiah when he returned, built up the walls, built up the gates, built up the altars, sword in one hand, working with the other. That's what we got to do.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Brandon.
Guys, we need your support, as I said, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Some of you can be very generous. Some of you cannot give anything. And that's why we want to push out the programming free of charge. We have a lot of people that are on very tight fixed incomes. I remember being at our conference in Milwaukee a year ago this past April. A single mother came up to me with 2 children. Her son couldn't have been more than 10 years old. She said he listens to you every day. He doesn't have a regular male father figure in his life. His dad's not here. His dad passed away. And she said he listens to you every day. Folks, that is a lot of responsibility, okay? And we take it seriously. But it also reminded me that there are moms out there trying to do the very best they can on the fixed budgets they can, and they can never financially send anything, and we don't want them to. We understand their situation. We want to minister to them. So we push out all this programming for free. And we want to keep doing that. So some of you can't give, but others of you can. And if you're one of those people tonight that can do $500, $1,000 or more, would you do that? Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there. And don't forget about legacy giving, leaving our foundation in your estate plans, please. You'll find all of the details for that at worldviewfoundation.com. We have a 36-year history. I started publicly writing and speaking in 1990, launched Worldview Tube. I started radio full-time in 1995, launched Worldview Tube in 2006. So we have a long history, folks. We have a long track record to show you who we are and what we're committed to. And I think that track record should be used to evaluate whether you should support us or not. And I think for a lot of you, that's why you do support us. You know, as one guy told me once, I like working with you, Brandon, because I know you're not going to change horses midstream now. So that's right. We are who we are. So support us, would you? If you agree with our mission statement and our faithfulness. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. Don't forget to get your pack of business cards absolutely free. You go to worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. They're free. We'll send them to you. If you run out of them, order up some more. We'll send them out to you again and pass them around. Tell a lot of people about Worldview Tube. We get so many emails from people saying, I wish I'd known about you years ago, but we're so glad we found you. We hear that so often. So there are people out there that are hungry for this kind of programming. They just don't know it exists. Invite them to come and watch by passing out these cards free of charge. Get your stack at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. All right. Thank you for watching. Until next time at Brandon House, may God save America and protect Israel. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview.